Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, one of the most common emails that I get usually involves the question, Neil, do you have any tips on how you produce a daily tech podcast on your own with no help from anyone else? Well, the answer is always just preparation. I schedule in 10 guests a week to speak with and come on this podcast, and that will cover me if a guest doesn't show up. It helps me stay ahead of the game, especially if I'm ill or have to go to a conference or going on holiday or anything like that. So I book in 10 guests a week. And I also do a little bit of research on every guest and try to follow a rough format just to keep things nice and simple. So today I was fully prepped, expecting to speak with the co-founder of a company called Treepoints. His name's Anthony. And then when I hopped on the call, feeling all prepared and ready to go, the guest was actually the other co-founder of Treepoints, and his name is Jacob Wedderburn-Day. And as soon as he put the camera on, I instantly recognised him from a conversation we had, I think, 2.5 years ago with his company, Stasher. It's just the best surprise, and especially because we just picked up exactly where we left off over 2.5 years ago. And it's so cool how we can just sometimes connect instantly with some people. But enough of my tales of serendipity and sliding doors style moments. Treepoints is a sustainability social enterprise, and they're helping businesses of all sizes reduce and offset their carbon footprint and plant trees. But trust me, this is a great story and it will inspire you. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to London here in the UK, where Jacob is coming back on the podcast to fill us in on what he's been doing during lockdown and how Treepoints is using technology to make a real difference in the world. So a massive warm welcome back to the show. It's been a few years since we last spoke when the world was a very different place. But can you remind the listeners with a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. My name is Jacob Wedderburn-Day. I'm the co-founder of Treepoints, which is what I'm here today to talk about, but also Stasher, which is what I was here last time to talk about. Running both businesses still. Stasher is a travel company, which explains why I then had to start Treepoints. Stasher is a travel company. It was doing really well pre-pandemic, and that was when we were chatting about the latest funding round that we've done. That is a platform where people can book luggage storage all around the world when they travel. The classic kind of before you check in, after you check out, where do you keep your stuff problem. Treepoints is a climate change social enterprise. So we help businesses calculate their carbon footprint, take steps to reduce it and take steps to offset it. And we've tried to do that in a scalable way. We just recently did a small funding round for Treepoints, and that's that was the reason we reached out to the show this time. But it's fun to be back. Thank you for having me.
No, it's great to have you back. And you've just put everyone to shame there as well, because I think during lockdown, most people are like, well, I'm going to learn an instrument. I'm going to learn a different language. But of course, they didn't do any of those things. You've actually launched a startup during lockdown.
Well, to be fair, I didn't learn any languages or instruments or anything else. It was it was like we were just saying just before we got chatting. I mean, Stasher was in a great place before COVID, and then COVID was probably like the nightmare scenario for us because we rely on people who are traveling and needing somewhere to store their bags, and no one was traveling, obviously. And then all the places, the hotels and the shops that form the supply side of our marketplace where people store the bags, they all had to shut down as well. So we went from being this great marketplace to literally a website overnight. And it was so quiet that in the first lockdown, we were like, okay, we'll just ride it out and then we'll see when the world kind of gets back to normal. And then obviously, as we've seen over the last couple of years, that's taken a lot longer than we probably all would have wished. And it was in later on in 2020 that me and my co-founder sat down together and we thought, God, if this does really take as long as it looks like it, we should probably do something else with our time, because we were young, we were keen to use our sort of talents in tech as they are to try and do something sort of positive. And partly we were bored, which I think a lot of us felt. But that was the origin story of Treepoints. And we were very interested in climate change as well. I guess goes without saying. Looking at working in that space. So.
Oh man, what a great story! And you say you're young though; you're veterans in the startup world now. You've ridden the global pandemic on the roller coaster ride, and you've experienced the big highs before all this. So
do feel a bit longer in the tooth now.
But let's take you back before all this, before our last conversation, and when the world was a very different place, when you were much, much younger. I'd love to know more about how you got where you are today. What's your origin story? Where did your passion for tech and startups come from? Can you remember what lit the spark and put you on this path?
Great question. I mean, to be honest, the big thing was probably meeting my co-founder. So Anne and I are friends from, first day of university. We moved into halls opposite each other, and both of us had, we were both studying economics, both had a real interest in business anyway. And I think around the time, like as we were going through uni, I remember looking at businesses like Airbnb and Uber that were going from kind of like, they were sort of going from new businesses to pretty much like household names in such a short space of time. And we were really impressed with that kind of model, particularly. We really liked the sort of platform model, the marketplace model. And I remember, we had so many like late night conversations throughout that time of like, oh, imagine like if we could make an Airbnb for this, or, that sort of thing. And like some of them probably really stupid ideas, most of them probably really stupid ideas. But then that was it was sort of thinking in that way and looking at the world in that way that eventually was what kind of led to the opportunity for Stasher, because that was when, like, literally when we left university and moved down to London and got jobs, we were also thinking like, oh, we'd love, like, this would be such a great time to try our hand at entrepreneurship. Like, we're young, we've got basically nothing to lose. It'd be really fun to kind of give something a go. So we started Stasher on the side of what else we were doing. And after, I think it was nearly just under a year of running it that way, was when we kind of got our lucky break and got some investment to take it full time. But yeah, sorry, I hopefully that was got into a bit of a longer answer, but that was the origin story. Just, yeah.
No, that's brilliant. And I love how that path led you to Stasher. And then even then, you experiencing great success. I know how popular it was. And obviously the travel industry took a hit, to say the least. And you could have just taken it easy for 18 months. But no, you went out there and launched Treepoints, which I believe is a sustainability social enterprise. But for people listening, hearing about it for the first time, can you tell me a little bit more about how you're helping businesses of all sizes reduce and offset their carbon footprint and price trees and plant trees, because it is such a big topic right now, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was a big trend that we were seeing, and as sort of like, I remember personally in the first lockdown, I felt a vague sense of conflict, because I was thinking, on the one hand, I was desperate for travel to come back. I was really keen for that to return, but I was we were all seeing, like, with people not moving around as much, you saw like wildlife returning to cities. You saw the sort of positive environmental effects that came with that. And I remember I was really struck by that. And then when it looked like the second lockdown was coming around and we were starting to think about what else we could do, that was kind of like, that was part of what triggered our interest in doing something in climate. Because we thought, you know what, travel is going to be really sort of vulnerable to the movements of the pandemic. But climate change is a problem that is going to endure. It's probably going to be the dominant theme of the decade. Certainly once sort of COVID subsides from like the sort of main media attention, climate change will probably come to take up an even bigger space. And we saw last year with COP that it already did. So what we decided to do with Treepoints, and Treepoints has evolved a little bit as a product. We followed the same kind of iteration approach that we did with Stasher. In short, we'll go to businesses and we'll help them understand what their carbon footprint is. We've got good people in-house. We originally worked with some sort of like experts from different universities and stuff. And now we've got to the point where we've got great people in-house that can help us with this. We'll help them estimate their footprints. We'll then recommend a plan for like reducing it and ultimately connect them with great offsetting projects, great tree planting projects. A big part of it, I think, a big part of the confusion around sustainability is just knowing what to do. I think everyone's sort of increasingly of the opinion that they need to do something. And I think basically we sort of see ourselves as that outsourced function that can just kind of guide you through the process. Where we want to take it and where we want to be a bit startup about it is introducing technology to make it helpful. So we have a great API that can just connect to your website, your sales processes, whatever. And that's the classic, like, plant a tree at point of sale. So we have all these tools that we can offer to our clients as well. But yeah, it's really that. It's just about being a helpful service to guide them. And the reason you said we're a social enterprise, and the reason for that is very much, we want it to be sort of impact first. So profits get recycled back into supporting climate projects and stuff like that.
I love that. And I think we often forget that it's consumers that's driving this as well. And more consumers they're only wanting to do business or buy from brands and businesses that are serious about sustainability and carbon negative, etc. So who are your customers? Are they startups, FTSE companies? I'm curious who's embracing this thinking now.
You're absolutely right about that. I think that consumer pressure is a really positive trend, and that's also only going in one direction. We found, we started off working with smaller companies, startups. I think that's the natural way to build your own credibility, as you sort of go with the companies that are willing to take a bit of a punt on a new initiative. We've got a FTSE client in our portfolio. Work with the guys from Big Yellow Storage to help them plant trees, which is really cool. They're probably the biggest single client that we work with, but we genuinely work with businesses from all range and sizes. We tend to find the smaller clients, they'll come to us for the whole works. They'll be like, start to finish, what do I need to do? And then the bigger clients, the likes of Big Yellow, tend to have a sustainability plan in place and are interested in some of the tools that we can offer around, like, you can plant trees really easily if you hook up the API, that sort of thing. So a real mixture. And genuinely, to anyone who owns a business who might be listening, it's something we're absolutely happy to help anyone with.
And do you have any examples of how businesses work with you? Because we'll have people listening all over the world. I think it's a bit of a moment here that you might be able to spread the word. So how do they work with you?
Literally as simple as just like registering your interest with us, reach out to me, reach out over our website. It really is straightforward. We will work with you to kind of come up with a plan. That can be as detailed or as brief as you need it to be, depending on where your focus is. But we'll help you estimate the emissions and the footprint of what you're doing. We'll then help you come up with a plan to reduce and to offset. And we can also, as I say, connect you with tools to make the offsetting or the tree planting really, really easy. And we work with some companies, like I say, with Big Yellow, where it's very much like they're keen just to do the tree planting. You can almost look at that as a sort of marketing tool if you want. It's very open-ended. You can use Treepoints however you want, and we'll basically help you with whatever aspect of sustainability you need help with. That probably sounds vague, but it's there's a lot of stuff, and I definitely recommend checking out the website for more info.
And if we do have anyone listening that is a little bit cynical, say, yeah, it's a great idealistic idea, but it's a little bit woolly, a little bit vague. How much difference can a business really make? So just to kind of hammer that home, how many trees have you planted, and how much carbon have you offset in the last, let's say, 12 months? Are there any stats around that you can share?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. We work across three fronts. So we've carbon offset over 7,000 tons. Equivalent, I think that's equivalent to something like 25 million miles driven by your average sort of petrol fuming car. We've planted 200,000 trees, and we also do work around plastic recycling, so ocean plastic recycling. So we've recycled 40,000 bottles from the ocean as well. So it's a beautiful thing, because I do feel like it's one of those things where we have some individual clients who probably only offset like 10 tons of carbon, and some who've been responsible for much more. But it really is the sum of like collective actions that get you to those quite impressive figures, I think.
Yeah, it really is a beautiful thing. You should be proud of yourself there. And like I said, for anyone that's cynical that is listening and thinking, oh yeah, another one of these idealistic ideas, you've planted over 200,000 trees, which makes a huge difference, man.
It's like two Regent's Parks. We did this when we planted 100,000. We ran around Regent's Park, which turned out to be exactly the sort of area of forest that we planted. So yeah, a forest twice that size.
And what I think is even cooler about that is you were a startup founder with a startup that was almost on hold while the travel industry was on hold. And as a result of just thinking, let's do something else rather than sit around being bored, you've planted 200,000 trees and made a real difference. That's
thank you.
Your family must be incredibly proud too, right?
Yeah. No, it's definitely, it's one of those things where you sort of get a bit lost in the day-to-day sometimes. You're always, you're looking at like, okay, how can we work with these people, blah, 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 the admin and stuff. And then you do step back and you have these beautiful moments where you look and you're like, oh, reflecting, actually, that's a good amount of impact. I think what's nice as well with the projects that we support, we tend to be quite sort of deliberate about the ones we choose to support. They also tie in really nicely with like the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So that's also like, there's a lot of employment that's gone into planting those trees as well. There's a lot of benefits to local communities, benefits to ecosystems apart from just the sort of climate benefits. So it's cool. It does make me happy to think it does all really sort of add up.
Awesome. And as this is a tech podcast, I've got to ask, can you tell me about the tech that makes all this possible and how your API makes integrating sustainable actions into things like sales and marketing completely effortless? Because again, that's another, it could be a bit of a headache for businesses that want to jump on board, but you've made it much easier, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing I'm really proud of, actually. I do think it's an elegant product. And I mean, what's nice is we started off, the website itself is actually, this is quite fun. We built the website just in Bubble, which is a no-code tool. And that was just because me and my co-founder were like, we wanted to try out one of these no-code tools, which is quite interested in them. It makes the front end sort of stuff a lot easier. It's kind of drag and drop interface. So we knocked up a sort of website for that, where people could sort of buy their carbon offsets and trees like directly. And we're like, okay, this is quite cool. But then we were like, as we work with businesses, we wanted to do stuff that was more sophisticated, more clever. That's where the sort of Python API comes into play. It's really, really easy to integrate. We've got really like nice, clear docs. At least that's like, I mean, that was something we wanted to take pride in, and good feedback we get is the docs are really clear. It's really easy to implement. And I think what's nice is, I mean, we're making it more versatile as we go. So the initial product it was designed to work for was just plant a tree for every sale, but we've been able to add more complex things. You know, you can set it up to trigger however you want. You can set it up to do carbon, to do plastic. We're now setting it up to do sort of estimates around like travel. So we're working with clients around, for example, train journeys, and that can pull data on like, okay, this is the approximate footprint of this journey, and then recommend the offset that you should take. So we can do quite cool things with travel and distances. Yeah, it's a nice piece of tech. I'm really excited to see where it goes, because I think that's when you can combine that sort of like estimation and recommended action, then you've got something quite powerful, I think.
Absolutely. And from a stress point of view, I also recently read that you've already raised an angel round and already break even. I mean, you've only been going, a year or so. So can you expand on that and how the funding's going to help you meet your future objectives too?
Yeah, I mean, we started it pretty much bootstrapped. And for a long time, we kind of, we were sort of keen to do it that way, because it was, for a while, it was a bit of a side hustle. It was we were waiting for Stasher to come back, and we just wanted to see, like, you know, if we could build it into something that was interesting. And what was really cool is when we did start developing the API and started working with businesses and saw that they liked it, we started to see, okay, this has more potential. And certainly the more you're able to leverage technology, the more scalable it becomes. And so basically we got to the summer and we're like, actually, you know, it's great because we're bringing on more clients, but then it's starting to take up more time. And Stash is looking like it's going to hopefully recover pretty soon. And so in order to kind of juggle that, we basically thought, okay, if we can raise a small round, it'll enable us to hire a few more people. It'll enable us to invest more in the tech and potentially sort of some marketing around that, and basically just kind of give us that like runway to kind of really get accelerating with it. So the round was kind of designed to turbocharge the bootstrapping that we'd done until that point. And I think I mean, you mentioned stress, and I think fundraising is always a little bit stressful no matter what form it takes. But this was quite a nice round to do. And I think now that it's done, I feel really confident, really excited. I think we can really run with this project now.
And I think if we were to go back when we last spoke, if I said to you that a little-known video conferencing app called Zoom would be worth more than the 15 airlines of the world combined, you would have laughed in my face. We couldn't have predicted that. But I think what we can predict is the next 5 to 10 years, all headlines around businesses and our individuals as well is going to be focused around offsetting your carbon and sustainability, etc. So with all that in mind, knowing what's coming in the future, what's your grand vision for Treepoints?
I mean, I think, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's such an amazing time and opportunity. And I feel like for now, we have some quite exciting like headline numbers. You know, we've said in our press release, we want to plant a tree for every UK citizen, which would see us somewhere around like 60 to 70 million trees planted. We want to offset enough to sort of make a meaningful dent in, for example, the UK's carbon footprint. All of those are the sort of impact metrics. But really, I mean, what we want to do is just keep adding more businesses that we're working with, and just keep providing like the best quality service that we can. And if we can be like a trusted provider for lots of UK businesses, I mean, to be fair, we don't have to limit ourselves to the UK. It's just that's what we've done till now. But if we can become like a really helpful, like high quality sort of provider of these kind of things, and good advice and ultimately start to make an impact on climate change as a whole, I mean, that's a massive problem. Then I just feel really proud to be a part of that solution, really.
And again, to put other people at shame here, not only did you build a side hustle that's turned out amazing, you also launched a podcast during lockdown as well that was quite a big hit on Reddit. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, that was fun. I feel like we weren't alone in using the first lockdown to launch a podcast. I'm sure lots of people did, but we got a bit lucky with that. We basically, Ant and I, as well as studying economics, we studied philosophy, have an enduring sort of passion for debating stuff. And we launched our first episode was like, should billionaires exist? It's called The Morality of Everyday Things, by the way. So I should have led with that. It's the morality of everyday things. And like the title indicates, we just talk about everyday philosophy questions, ethics based especially. So should billionaires exist? We got a bit lucky with Reddit, picked it up and woke up the next day to see it had like over 1,000 listens, which was pretty special. And so we've kept it going since then because it's picked up quite a nice audience, and that's still very much it's very much our hobby alongside what we do. But we try and launch an episode between once and twice a month, and tackled all sorts of interesting questions. We looked at, are you a bad person if you work at Facebook? Controversial thing to ask on a sort of tech podcast. Everything from that to like, a football is overpaid. The most recent one we did was looking at liberal democracy. Is it the best form of government that we can have? And it's a wide ranging thing, but I do find that a lot of fun.
Oh man, well, you've just got yourself a new subscriber. I'll definitely be checking that out.
Hey, thank you. Yeah.
And we began the podcast talking about your origin story, but now we've come full circle. And one thing that's changed since we last spoke was I always ask my guests if there's a song, piece of music, book, or anything that has inspired them throughout their career that we can add to either our Amazon list or Spotify playlist. Do you have a choice and a story you can share with us?
Great question. I mean, one of the books that I really like and always have is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is very sort of business schooly kind of book to recommend. But I find the habits in question, I think, have sort of held me in good stead as long as and I read the book like 10 years ago. And that's just things around like being proactive, being sort of like very disciplined with your time, looking for synergies in the way that you work with people, build it. And I mean, the 7 habits, the title sort of indicates it's kind of about building sort of like good habits in the way that you sort of live and run your life, things around like keeping fit and stuff like that. So I personally, I love that book, and it's one that I sort of find myself coming back to, particularly if I find times sort of busy or stressful. It's quite a good way to sort of like realign. But yeah, that would probably be mine.
Awesome. I'll get that on our Amazon wish list. And what about for the Spotify playlist? Is there anything, even a guilty pleasure, that when you're coding that you listen to? Is there anything we can add there?
I'm obsessed with the Arctic Monkeys. I love them. Everything apart from their 6th album. So I'd happily put any of those on there. I think their first album, Whatever People Say I Am, That's What I'm Not, is absolutely golden. I love AM as well. But yeah, anything by the Arctic Monkeys you could put on the playlist.
Love it. Brilliant. And for anyone listening that wants to find out more information about Treepoints, if you point them in the right direction there, and also feel free to give them a reminder on how to find more about Stasher as well. Yeah.
So websites are stasher.com, treepoints.green, and then the podcast is The Morality of Everyday Things. You're also very welcome to reach out to me. You can find me on either email, which is jacob@stasher.com, jacob@treepoints.green. I'm active on LinkedIn as well. So yeah, no, please, I'll be more than happy to get in touch with anyone who's listening to this and wants to know more.
Awesome. I'll have those links so people can find you nice and easily. So much I've loved about our conversation. It was a bit of an unexpected surprise to see you come on. Yeah. And it was a welcome surprise, and hearing about your story and make me feel bad now because of how
please don't.
building the side hustle during lockdown and making a real difference. I was brought up in the 80s on Knight Rider and Michael and Devon saying Michael, one man can make a difference, and here you are during lockdown, 250,000 trees later, making a real difference. But thank you so much for sharing that story.
No, a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
How cool is that? A lesson for all of us, I think, because it can be so hard to pull yourself out of your comfort zone, sat there on your favourite chair watching Netflix when business is down or lockdown has taken over. And for me, that is the real sliding doors moment here. You go through one door where you can sit in your couch, binge watching TV shows and playing video games, which I'm guilty of doing, don't get me wrong. Or go through door number 2. While one startup is affected by travel bans and business has dramatically slowed down, and use that as an opportunity to build a side hustle that could make a real difference in the world. And anyone that says, yeah, but Neil, it's not that easy. No, it isn't. But it's 2 years later, and when Treepoints have planted over 200,000 trees and leveraged technology to make it happen. If that doesn't inspire you, I don't know what will. And what I also love is Jacob is an incredibly humble guy, incredibly cool, who I suspect doesn't realise the power of his words. And in this story today that he shared, I don't think he realises how he could possibly inspire someone else listening anywhere in 165 countries that this show reaches. And then that person that's listening to that conversation on a bus somewhere will go out and change the world in their own way too. So on that note, I will cheesily say that yes, technology does work best when it brings people together, and you can be the change that you want to see in the world. And if you think I'm too optimistic, feel free to blame those 80s TV shows that I was raised on that almost instilled in me that we can all make a difference. But today we just shared Jacob's story. And I want to prove to each and every one of you, especially the cynical listeners, that we can all make a difference. If you've got a story to share, wherever you're listening in the world, send me an email now, techblogwriter@outlook.com. Send me a direct message on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, @Neil C. Hughes, or pop by my website, techblogwriter.co.uk. If you'd like to come on here, share your story, if you just want to send me a quick message of what Jacob's story meant to you today, or whatever it is, send me a message. But on that note, it's time for me to get out of here. I'll be back bright and early tomorrow. Got another guest lined up. But a massive thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.